Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Happy Wednesday, Feliz Marcolas. Welcome to Team Angie. I'm team member and private personal consultant Aaron Glenn. Also, an advocate for mental health awareness as well. Just try to smoke and chill before I do my stream. Try to be on at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Try to be. Um, yeah, that's my goal. But nevertheless, you can catch me daily, every day. Before the end of the day, come check out my page and you'll have some inspiration for the day. And if not, you will have some inspiration leading into the day. I miss days. I'm a human being. Make mistakes. Sometimes I don't have the energy. Sometimes I have other things going on. Nevertheless, this is my goal for the year to get monetized on YouTube. So this is what I'm currently doing, and I'm working on that. If you guys want to learn how to make money online, starting your own online business, you want to learn high income earning skills with live mentorship, this is where you get your free blueprint copy. You can learn step by step a box. Business in a box is what I call it. Basically, like color by number. You have everything you need. You just have to follow the instructions to see the puzzle complete, to see the whole picture, and to see progress. Also, to be successful once you embark on making this money and having a perfect customer, knowing who your perfect customer is, knowing how to have recurring customers. That's what every business owner and business needs to stay in business and also to be successful. Money isn't everything, but money is a tool that we use to advance and better our lives. Mental health awareness is a master key to happiness in life and also to achieving goals in life. All successful, highly successful people have two things in common. Two things that anybody can have if they apply to themselves, which is passion. They live life on purpose. They have a purpose for why they wake up in the morning. They have a purpose for what they do with their time and the way that they spend their energy. They have passion. They're passionate about the way that they live their life and spend their time and energy on the things that brings them happiness. They're constantly in pursuit, which is the next thing, persistence. They're constantly in pursuit of their passions. No matter how many times they fail, they're going to continuously pursue their dreams and go and be persistent at it through every setback, through every failure. They're going to continuously continue to strive to experiencing that reality that they desire, and therefore they become successful and high successful people because no matter what setbacks, they won't be broken, and they won't allow these minor mistakes and or mishaps and or failures to be their final destination. Nevertheless, happy Wednesday. It's 11. Make a wish. I wish that you all would get enlightenment and also to have the power to really truly think for yourself. The mind is a terrible thing to waste. This is the reading for today of November the 19th, 2025. Leave outcomes to me. Follow me wherever I lead without worrying about how it will all turn out. Think of your life as an adventure with me as your guide and companion. Live in the now, concentrating on staying in step with me. When our path leads to a cliff, be willing to climb it with my help. When we come to a resting place, take time to be refreshed in my presence. Enjoy the rhythm of life. Live close to me. You already know the ultimate destination of your journey, your entrance into heaven. So keep your focus on the path just before you. Leaving out comes to me. Keep your focus on the path just before you. Leaving out comes to me, comes up to me. This was inspired by the book of Psalms, chapter 27, verse 13 through 14. And also, nevertheless, it was inspired by the book of Exodus, chapter 15, verse 13. This is the word for today of November the 19th. You're already, you already know the ultimate destination of your journey, your entrance into heaven. It's a pretty powerful word for today. I kind of stumbled upon it at the end of the reading. I have a few things on my mind. What I'm thinking about is my dream. I dream I used to not dream. I used to just sleep, be refreshed, rested, just total darkness. Doesn't seem like it's happening for long, but I just lay there in darkness and I get back up and I was asleep. I woke up fresh, energized. And then there come a time where I started dreaming, started having recurrent dreams. Um, Started off just normal, a normal day. I like to be out around people, not for long, but just enough, to socialize or whatnot, be amongst my peers. And the reason why I don't like to be around big crowds and people for long because I'm very empath, very empath. I don't really know how to spit the word out. Empathic, if that's even a word. I'm an empathic person, meaning my feelings go deep. I feel deeply. Not only do I feel deeply for myself, I feel feelings of others, meaning sometimes my feelings are not my feelings. And it took a while to actually really understand what was going on and to really differentiate whose feelings that I'm feeling. Being around a big crowd, sometimes I pick up on energies of other people, not sure who feelings I'm feeling. Sometimes it just becomes too much for me. It drains my energy. Being so open to all of these different energies, some being mine, some intense, and some being others, being mild or intense. Why am I bringing this up? Because when I first started dreaming, it was something like that. I'm around a lot of people. And then it gets to the point where I need to go be by myself for a while. I need to go recalibrate my energy. I need to go start over, right? And try to shuffle through what I'm feeling, uh, bring some type of clarity to what's going on, to these subtle changes of my emotions. But anyway, once I start to go refresh myself, I start getting chased by some guys in suits. They always start off out the crowd. They just like like it's just crunch time. You just feel it. I feel it in my spirit. Even though I'm dreaming at this point, I feel like okay, some people finna be after me, And somehow we end up from a parking lot to the woods, and I run through the woods. But these people that pop out the crowd is just like you suddenly get scared. That shock of a feeling that just it's like that kind of like you just suddenly feel it, and then all of a sudden they're chasing you, and you gonna chase you, and you just took off. So I used to have that dream like time and time again, night after night. Um, I don't know why, but I just be running, and sometimes I'll get away, and sometimes it'll get to the point where I have nowhere else to run. I'll come to an edge of a cliff, and I turn around and they're right there. So this happened a few times as well. Sometimes what happened was I was running and I accidentally slipped down. And I woke up before I fell, so I'd be falling. And it happened for like years at a time. Eventually, that progressed to a different recurring dream. But what I got from that in that time, while I was having that running through the woods situation, I was getting closer to Christ. I was embarking on a spiritual path, learning about different things of the spiritual world, and come to realize I was really running from my own self, my spiritual path. Whenever these different spirits would come to guide me or teach me or whatever, it was just like I didn't really want to confront them. I didn't want to face that truth. I didn't want to see what that experience was like. It was just too much. It was kind of scary. So I would run. I would abandon that mission, and I would neglect what's to be next. I never really was scared, but I just wake up exhausted, like, wow, why am I being chased and what is this about? And eventually I realized that I was running from myself. I was running from the other side of life, the parts that I'm not used to. I'm used to walking the streets, seeing the streets, but I'm not used to being in the wilderness, not knowing what's where, the massive layout like this. And this is what the spiritual world is like. It's a big new layout, it's a new land. I'm not familiar with this foreign ground, and I'm used to it, so I would run away. And then it was like, the more I get into my spiritual path, the more I would get closer to Christ, the more I would start to understand my dreams, the more I would start to understand my walk in life, and the more things that really make sense, the more I could really see these signs and symbols, even in my spirit world. Sometimes I had dreams and they telling me like, yo, this is what's going on in your living world. You need to be aware. You need to be prepared. You need to um, basically know that you finna embark on a situation that's going to be life changing. So live presently, be aware, and don't miss these crucial moments that's going to happen in life. So just like in my dream world, I'm always looking for those moments that's going to impact my life in a positive way, in a major way, right? I'm learning the power of the mind and why mindset really matters. Even in dreams, it got to the point where I know what's going on when I'm dreaming and when I'm not, because I'm set aware and I'm so attentive to what's going on. I'm paying attention, and these signs be helping me walk through my living life, my natural walk of life, right? This walk of reality is guiding me to living my true life, being in rhythm with the universe, not having to force things to happen and work out for me, learning how to manifest truly and more powerfully, learning how to strengthen up my faith and have more faith. This walk with Christ is a choice each day. It's not easy at all, especially when it requires sacrifice, it requires trust, it requires faith. Sometimes you don't know what's next, like we just read in this book, but ultimately I know where we're headed. That's why I choose to follow Christ. That doesn't mean that I won't have temptations and distractions that have me drifting off my path. Um, just want to chat for a bit about dreams, about signs and symbols, about knowing where to spend your mind, spend your attention to, what thoughts to really focus on, what thoughts really deserve some attention, what thoughts should I put energy into, things like that, right? Those things are important. The little voice inside you, it's hard to hear that voice sometimes when you don't spend time with getting to know yourself. This year has been about that, and only about that. Me spending time with myself, getting to know myself, spending time with Christ. Christ enlightening me, showing me who I am and who I can become, giving me the strength to carry on this journey step by step each day. But nevertheless, this is a video of awareness about mindset, why mindset matters, and what the opposition does daily to distract you, to keep you from becoming truly who you are meant to be, and why is this spiritual battle going on? What's it about, and how can you protect yourself? These are questions that I ask myself and questions that I seek answers to. Also, it helps me with my mindset. It's important to think outside the box, to change better decisions and be enlightened and be empowered.
Dramatically prohibits accurate thinking.
What other disadvantages are there in free expression of opinions?
The person who talks too much informs the world of his aims and plans and gives to others the opportunity to profit by his ideas. Wise men keep their plans to themselves and refrain from expressing uninvited opinions. This prevents others from appropriating their ideas and makes it difficult for others to interfere with their plans.
Why do so many people indulge in the habit of expressing uninvited opinions?
The habit is one way of expressing egotism and vanity. The desire for self-expression is inborn in people. The motive back of the habit is to attract the attention of others and to impress them favorably. Actually, it has just the opposite effect. When the self-invited speaker attracts attention, it usually is unfavorable.
Yes. What other disadvantages has the habit?
The person who insists on talking seldom has an opportunity to learn by listening to others.
But isn't it true that a magnetic speaker often puts himself in the way of opportunity to benefit himself by attracting the attention of others through his powers of oratory?
Yes, a magnetic orator does have an asset of tremendous value in his ability to impress people by his speech. But he cannot make the best use of this asset if he forces his speech on others without their invitation. No single quality adds more to one's personality than the ability to speak with emotional feeling, force, and conviction. But the speaker must not impose his speech upon others without being invited to do so. There is an old saying that nothing is worth more than its actual cost. This applies as well to the free, uninvited expression of opinions as to material things.
What about people who volunteer their opinions by expressing them in writing? Do they also suffer by lack of self-discipline?
One of the worst pests on earth is the person who writes uninvited letters to people of prominence. Men in public office, moving picture stars, men who have succeeded in business or written a best-selling book. And people whose names appear often in the newspapers are continuously besieged by people who write letters expressing their opinion on all subjects.
But the writing of uninvited letters is a harmless way of finding pleasure through self-expression, is it not? What damage does one do by the habit?
Habits are contagious. Every habit attracts a flock of its relatives. The habit of doing anything that is useless leads to the formation of other habits that are useless, especially the habit of drifting. But that is not all the dangers associated with the habit of indulging in uninvited expression of opinions. The habit creates enemies and places in their hands dangerous weapons by which they may do great injury to the one who indulges in it. Thieves and confidence men and racketeers pay big prices for the names and addresses of the writers of uninvited letters. Knowing as they do, the writers of these letters become easy victims of all manner of schemes that result in the loss of their money. They refer to the writers of such letters as nuts. If you wish to know how foolish people are who write uninvited letters, read the nut column of any newspaper, the column in which the paper publishes the voluntary opinions of its readers, and you will see for yourself how the writers of such letters antagonize people and invite opposition from others.
Now, I had no idea, Your Majesty, that people get into so much difficulty through uninvited expression of their opinions. But now that you have brought up the subject, I do remember writing the editor of a prominent magazine an uninvited letter of criticism, which cost me a fine position on his staff, at a fat salary.
That is a perfect example. The proper place to begin self-discipline is right where you stand. The way to begin is by recognizing the truth, that there is nothing for good or evil throughout the myriads of universes except the power of natural law. There is no individual personality anywhere throughout the myriad of universes with the slightest power to influence a human being, save nature and human beings themselves. There is no human being now living, no human being has ever lived, and no human being ever will live with the right or the power to deprive another human being of the inborn privilege of free and independent thought. That privilege is the only one over which any human being can have absolute control. No adult human being ever loses the right to freedom of thought, but most humans lose the benefits of this privilege either by neglect or because it has been taken away from them by their parents or religious instructors before the age of understanding. These are self-evident truths, no less important because they are being called to your attention by the devil than they would be if brought to your attention by my opposition.
But what are people going to lean upon in the hour of emergency when they know not where nor to whom to appeal?
Let them lean upon the only dependable power available to any human being.
And what is that?
Themselves. The power of their own thoughts. The only power they can control and may rely upon. The only power which cannot be perverted, colored, modified, or falsified by their dishonest fellow human beings.
Seems logical, but why must I come to the devil to discover such profound truths? Let's get back to the 7 principles. You've already disclosed enough information to show clearly that the secret of how to break the power of hypnotic rhythm is wrapped in the 7 principles. You have shown, too, that the most important of these principles is self-discipline. Now, go ahead and describe the other 5 principles you have not yet mentioned and indicate what part they play in giving one self-discipline.
First, let me summarize that part of my confession we have already covered. I have frankly told you that my 2 most effective devices for mastering human beings are the habit of drifting and the law of hypnotic rhythm. I have shown you that drifting is not a natural law, but a man-made habit which leads to man's submission to the law of hypnotic rhythm. The 7 principles are the media by which man may break the hold of hypnotic rhythm and take possession again of his own mind. You see, therefore, the 7 principles are the 7 steps which lead victims of hypnotic rhythm out of the self-made prisons in which they are bound.
The 7 principles are the master key that unlocks the door to spiritual, mental, and economic self-determination. Is that true?
Yes, that's another way of stating the truth.
Is failure ever a benefit to man?
Yes. Indeed, learning from adversity is the 3rd of the 7 principles. But few people know that every adversity brings which. Still few people know the difference between temporary defeat and failure. If this knowledge were generally known, I would be deprived of one of my strongest weapons of control over human beings.
But I understood you to say that failure is one of your greatest allies. I got the impression from your confession that failure causes people to lose ambition and quit trying, and then you take them over without opposition on their part.
That is just the point. I take them over after they quit trying. If they knew the difference between temporary defeat and failure, they would not quit when they meet with opposition from life. If they knew that every form of defeat and all failures bring with them the seed of unborn opportunity, they would keep on fighting and win. Success usually is but one short step beyond the point where one quits fighting.
Is that all one might learn from adversity, defeat, and failure?
No, that is the least of what one might learn. I hate to tell you this, but failure often serves as a blessing in disguise because it breaks the grip of hypnotic rhythm and frees the mind for a fresh start.
Now we are getting somewhere. So, you have confessed at long last that even nature's law of hypnotic rhythm can be, and often is, annulled by nature herself. Is that correct?
No, that is not stating the matter accurately. Nature never reverses any of her natural laws. Nature does not take away a human being's freedom of thought through hypnotic rhythm. The individual gives up his freedom by abuse of this law. If a man jumped from a tree and was killed by the sudden impact of his body with the earth, through the law of gravity, you wouldn't say nature murdered him, would you? You would say the man neglected to relate himself properly to the law of gravity.
I'm beginning to see. The law of hypnotic rhythm is capable of both negative and positive application. It may drag one down to slavery through loss of the privilege of freedom of thought, or it may help one rise to great heights of achievement through the free use of thought, depending on how the individual relates himself to the law.
So basically, hypnotic rhythm is this. You want something, right? You got to work for it. You can pray for it, yes, but those prayers are only answered the way that you pray. If you pray already doubtful, you're just going to have a doubtful experience, and therefore your prayer is answered in a way of not being answered. And then vice versa. You align yourself with the universe by putting in the work. Like, you want a job, right? You're going to fill out some applications. That's how you align yourself with what you want, and then you can pray on it to solidify it even more, locking it into existence, creating that experience. Therefore, you'll pray after filling out X amount of applications. You'll pray, say, thank you for this experience. I know that you have something for me. Whatever is best for me is going to work out for me. And it's going to call me, and I'm going to be working this week or this day or whatever, right? And you just thank God, saying, thank you for having my back. You know I need money, and I know you know why I'm trying to get this money, and I thank you for working it out. And then there you go. What people call miracles, because they don't understand how to align themselves with things, and the whole power of being in the present and the power of words, how you align yourself and use these things, right? Knowledge is only good when you know how to use it and when to use it. You can learn a lot of things, but it's like if you don't know what to do with these things when you learn them and how to apply them, when to apply them, when to use them, that's when it's a burden. But and vice versa, knowledge can be a blessing. Anyway, this is how manifestation works as well. And hypnotic rhythm is just aligning yourself with what you want and allowing the universe to make it solid, make it permanent, is what he's saying. Just like habits, right? They keep saying habits because habits is hypnotic rhythm. The more you do something, the more you become in line with that frequency, and then after a while, it becomes a solid thing that goes on. You don't even have to think about it. Just like we're in hypnotic rhythm with walking. Once you learn how to walk, you're in rhythm with walking. You never forget how to do it, unless you just decide not to do it one day, or something happens where you unaligned, you have to learn how to do it again.
Is that correct?
Now you have it right.
But what about failure? One does not fail intentionally with purpose aforethought. No one encourages temporary defeat. These are circumstances over which the individual often has no control whatsoever. How, then, can it be said that nature does not take away one's freedom of thought when failure destroys ambition, willpower, and the self-confidence essential to make a fresh start?
Failure is a man-made circumstance. It is never real until it has been accepted by man as permanent. Stating it another way, failure is a state of mind. Therefore, it is something an individual can control until he neglects to exercise this privilege. Nature does not force people to fail, but nature does impose her law of hypnotic rhythm upon all minds, and through this law gives permanency to the thoughts which dominate those minds. In other words, failure thoughts are taken over by the law of hypnotic rhythm and made permanent if the individual accepts any circumstances as being permanently takes over and makes permanent thoughts of success.
What part, then, does failure play in helping an individual break the grip of hypnotic rhythm after that law has been fast?
Climax in which one has the privilege of clearing his mind of fear and making a new start in another direction. Failure proves conclusively that something is wrong with one's aims or the plans by which the object of these aims is sought. Failure is the dead end of the habit path one has been following, and when it is reached, it forces one to leave that path and take up another, thereby creating a new rhythm. But failure does more than this. It gives an individual an opportunity to test himself, wherein he may learn how much willpower he possesses. Failure also forces people to learn many truths they would never discover without it. Failure often leads an individual to an understanding of the power of self-discipline, without which no one could turn back after having once been the victim of hypnotic rhythm. Study the lives of all people who achieve outstanding success in any calling, and observe with profit that their success is usually in exact ratio to their experiences of defeat before succeeding.
Is this all you have to say of the advantages of failure?
No, I have barely begun. If you want the real significance of adversity, failure, defeat, and all other experiences which break up a human being's habits and force him to form new habits, watch nature at her work. Nature uses illness to break the physical rhythm of the body when the cells and organs become improperly related. She uses economic depressions to break the rhythm of mass thought when great numbers of people become improperly related, through business, social, and political activities. And she uses failure to break the rhythm of negative thought when an individual becomes improperly related to himself in his own mind. Observe carefully, and you will see that everywhere in nature there is always at work a natural law which gives eternal change to all matter, all energy, and to the power of thought. The only permanent thing in the universe is change, eternal, inexorable change, through which every atom of matter and every unit of energy has the opportunity to properly relate itself to all other units of matter and energy. And every human being has the opportunity and the privilege of properly relating himself to all other human beings, no matter how many mistakes he makes, or how many times or in what ways he may be defeated. When mass failure overtakes a nation, such as the 1929 World Business Depression, the circumstance is in perfect harmony with nature's plan to break up man's habits and give out fresh opportunities.
What you are saying intrigues me. Am I to understand that hypnotic rhythm has something to do with the way people relate themselves to one another?
That thing called character is nothing but a manifestation of the law of hypnotic rhythm. Therefore, when speaking of one's character, it would be proper to say his thought habits have been crystallized into a positive or a negative personality. Through hypnotic rhythm, one is good or bad because of the knitting together of his thoughts and deeds through hypnotic rhythm. One is bound by poverty or blessed with abundance because his aims, plans, and desires, or lack of them, have been made permanent and real by hypnotic rhythm.
Is that all you have to say of the connection between hypnotic rhythm and human relationships?
No, I have just begun. Remember, while I am talking, I am speaking of the influence of hypnotic rhythm in connection with all human relationships. Men who succeed in business do so entirely because of the way they relate themselves to their associates and to others outside of the business. Professional men who succeed do so largely because of the manner in which they relate themselves to their clients. It is much more important for the lawyer to know people and to know the laws of nature than it is to know the law. And the doctor is a failure before he starts unless he knows how to relate himself to his patients so as to establish their faith in him. Marriage succeeds or fails entirely because of the manner in which the participants relate themselves to one another. Proper relationship in marriage begins with a proper motive for the marriage. Most marriages do not bring happiness because the contracting parties neither understand nor attempt to understand the law of hypnotic rhythm, through the operation of which every word they speak, every act in which they engage, and every motive by which they are inspired to deal with each other is picked up and woven into a web that entangles them in controversial misery, or gives to them the wings of freedom through which they soar above all forms of unhappiness. Every newly made acquaintanceship between people ripens into friendship and then into spiritual harmony, sometimes called love, or plants a germ of suspicion and doubt which evolves and grows into open rebellion, according to the way in which the participants in the acquaintanceship relate themselves to one another. Hypnotic rhythm picks up the dominating motives, aims, purposes, and feelings of the contacting minds, and weaves these into some degree of faith or fear, love or hatred. After the pattern has taken definite shape, as it does with time, it is forced upon the contacting minds and made a part thereof. In this silent way does nature make permanent the dominating factors of every human relationship. In every human relationship, the evil motives and the evil deeds of the contacting individuals are coordinated and consolidated into definite form and subtly woven into that all-important human trait known as character. In the same manner, the motives and the deeds of good are consolidated and forced upon the individual. You see, therefore, it is not only one's deeds, but also one's very thoughts which determine the nature of all human relationships.
You are leading into pretty deep water. Let's keep it near the shore, where I can follow you without fear of getting beyond a safe depth. Go ahead and tell me how this subject of human relationships actually works in the current affairs of a problem-filled world such as we have today.
That is a happy thought. But let me make sure you understand the principles I am telling about, before I try to show you how to apply them in the affairs of life. I wish to be sure you understand that the law of hypnotic rhythm is something that no one can control, influence, or evade. But everyone can relate himself to this law so as to benefit by its inexorable operation. Harmonious relationship with the law consists entirely of the individual changing his habits so they represent the circumstances and the things the individual wants and is willing to accept. No one can change the law of hypnotic rhythm any more than one can change the law of gravity, but everyone can change himself. Remember, therefore, in all the discussion of this subject, that all human relationships are made and maintained by the habits of the individuals related. The law of hypnotic rhythm plays only the part of solidifying the factors which constitute human relationships, but it does not create those factors. Before we go further with the discussion of human relationships, I want you to get a clear understanding of the subconscious mind. The term subconscious mind represents a hypothetical physical organ which has no actual existence. The mind of man consists of universal energy, some call it infinite intelligence, which the individual receives, appropriates, and organizes in definite thought forms through the network of intricate physical apparatus known as a brain. These thought forms are replicas of various stimuli which reach the brain through the 5 commonly known physical senses, and the 6th sense, which is not so well known. When any form of stimuli reaches the brain and takes the definite shape of thought, it is classified and stored away in a group of the brain cells known as the memory group. All thoughts of a similar nature are stored together, so that the bringing forth of one leads to easy contact with all its associates. The system is very similar to the modern office filing cabinet, and it is operated in a similar manner. The thought impressions with which one mixes the greatest amount of emotion, or feeling, are the dominating factors of the brain, because they are always near the surface, at the top of the filing system, so to speak, where they spring into action voluntarily the moment an individual neglects to exercise self-discipline. These emotion-laden thoughts are so powerful, they often cause an individual to rush into action and indulge in deeds which have not been submitted to or approved by his reasoning faculty. These emotional outbursts usually destroy harmony in all human relationships. The brain often brings together combinations of emotional feelings so powerful they completely set aside the control of the reasoning faculty. On all such occasions, human relationships are apt to be lacking in harmony. Through the operation of the sixth sense, the brain of a human being may contact the filing cabinet of other brains and inspect at will whatever thought impressions are on file there. The condition under which one person may contact and inspect the filing cabinet of another person's brain is generally known as harmony. But you may better understand what is meant if I say brains attuned to the same rate of thought vibrations can easily and quickly exercise the privilege of entering and inspecting each other's filing cabinets of thoughts. In addition to receiving organized thoughts from the filing cabinets of other brains through the sixth sense, one can, through this same physical organ, contact and receive information from the universal storehouse known as infinite intelligence. All information reaching one's brain through the sixth sense comes from sources not easily isolated or traced. Therefore, this sort of mind. The sixth sense is the organ of the brain through which one receives all information, all knowledge, all thought impressions which do not come through one or more of the 5 physical senses. Now that you understand how the mind operates, you will more easily understand how and why people come to grief through improper human relationships. You understand how human relationship may be made to yield riches in their highest form, riches in material, mental, and spiritual estates. Moreover, you will understand there can never be happiness except through understanding and application of the right principles of human relationships. You will understand, too, that no individual is an entity unto himself, that completeness of mind can be attained only by harmony of purpose and deed between 2 or more minds. You will understand why every human being should, of his own choice, become his brother's keeper in fact, as well as in theory.
What you say may be true, but I still insist that you have me beyond safe depths of thought. Let us get back nearer to the shore, where I can wade in familiar water.
And this is how people become empaths as well, because that third eye, that sixth sense, is tapping in information that is hard to explain. And some people's sixth sense is really strong. This dude is pretty shallow. He don't really know a lot of this stuff in depth or practice it or whatever. You can kind of tell, but I mean, I'm being patient with him as he learns.
We shall go out into the deeper water after we learn to swim well. We started out to discuss the subject of how to profit by adversity, but it seems we have drifted somewhat afield from that subject.
We have detoured, but we have not drifted. The devil never drifts. The detour was necessary in order that you might be prepared to understand the most important part of this entire interview. We are now ready to get back to the discussion of the subject of adversity. Inasmuch as most adversities grow out of improper relationships between people, it seems important to understand how people may become properly related. Naturally, the question arises as to what is a proper relationship between people. The answer is that the proper relationship is one that brings to all connected with it, or affected by it, some form of benefit.
What then is an improper relationship?
Any relationship between people which damages anyone, or brings any form of misery or unhappiness to any of the individuals.
How can improper relationships be corrected?
By change of mind of the person causing the improper relationship, or by changing the persons to the relationship. Some minds harmonize naturally, while others just as naturally clash. Successful human relationships, to endure as such, must be formed of minds that naturally harmonize, quite aside from the question of having common interests as a means of bringing them into harmony. When you speak of business leaders who succeed because they know how to pick men, you might more correctly say they succeed because they know how to associate minds which harmonize naturally. Knowing how to pick people successfully for any definite purpose in life is based upon ability to recognize the types of people whose minds naturally harmonize.
Stay focused on adversity, if you will. If there are possible benefits to be found through adversity, name some of them.
It discourages selfishness by proving that no one can succeed without the cooperation of others. Adversity forces an individual to test his mental, physical, and spiritual strength. It thus brings him face to face with his weaknesses and gives him the opportunity to bridge them. Adversity forces one to seek ways and means to definite ends by meditation and introspective thought. This often leads to the discovery and use of the sixth sense, through which one may communicate with infinite intelligence. Adversity forces one to recognize the need for intelligence not available except from sources outside of one's own mind. Adversity breaks old habits of thought and gives one an opportunity to form new habits. Therefore, it may serve to break the hold of hypnotic rhythm and change its operation from negative to positive ends.
What is the greatest benefit one may receive through adversity?
The greatest benefit of adversity is that it may, and generally does, force one to change one's thought habits, thus breaking and redirecting the force of hypnotic rhythm.
In other words, failure always is a blessing when it forces one to acquire knowledge or to build habits that lead to the achievement of one's major purpose in life. Is that correct?
Yes, and something more. Failure is a blessing when it forces one to depend less upon material forces and more upon spiritual forces. Many human beings discover their other selves, the forces which operate through the power of thought, only after some catastrophe deprives them of the full and free use of their physical bodies. When a man can no longer use his hands and his feet, he usually begins to use his brain. Thus he puts himself in the way of discovering the power of his own mind.
What benefits may be derived from the loss of material things, money, for example?
The law none greater, however, than the truth that man has control over nothing and has no assurance of the permanent use of anything except his own power of thought.
I wonder if this is not the greatest benefit available through adversity.
No. The greatest potential benefit of any circumstance which causes one to make a fresh start is that it provides an opportunity to break the grip of hypnotic rhythm and set up a new set of thought habits. New habits offer the only way out for people who fail. Most people who escape from the negative to the positive operation of the law of hypnotic rhythm do so only because of some form of adversity which forces them to change their thought habits.
Isn't adversity apt to break one's self-reliance and cause one to give up hope?
It has that effect on those whose willpower is weak through long-established habits of drifting. It has the opposite effect on those who have not been weakened through drifting. The non-drifter meets with temporary defeat and failure, but his reaction to all forms of adversity is positive. He fights instead of giving up, and usually wins. Life gives no one immunity against adversity, but life gives to everyone the power of positive thought, which is sufficient to master all circumstances of adversity and convert them into benefits. The individual is left with the privilege of using or neglecting to use his prerogative right to think his way through all adversities. Every individual is forced either to use his thought power for the attainment of definite positive ends, or by neglect or design, use this power for the attainment of negative ends. There can be no compromise, no refusal to use the mind. The law of hypnotic rhythm forces every individual to give some degree of use, either negative or positive, to his mind. But it does not influence the individual as to which use he will make of his mind.
Am I to understand from what you say that every adversity is a blessing?
No, I did not say that. I said there is the seed of an equivalent advantage in every adversity. I did not say there was the full-blown flower of advantage, just the seed. Usually the seed consists of some form of knowledge, some idea or plan, or some opportunity which would not have been available except through the change of thought habits forced by the adversity.
Are those all the benefits available to human beings through failure?
No. Failure is used by nature as a common language in which she chastises people when they neglect to adapt themselves to her laws. For example, the World War was man-made and destructive. Nature planted in the circumstances of the war the seed of an equivalent reprimand in the form of a world depression. The depression was inevitable and inescapable. It followed the war as naturally as day follows night, and by the operation of the selfsame law, the law of hypnotic rhythm.
Am I to understand that the law of hypnotic rhythm is the same as that which Ralph Waldo Emerson called the law of compensation?
The law of hypnotic rhythm is the law of compensation. It is the power with which nature balances negative and positive forces throughout the universes, in all forms of energy, in all forms of matter, and in all human relationships.
Does the law of hypnotic rhythm operate quickly in all instances? For example, does this law immediately bless one with the benefits of positive application of thoughts, or curse one immediately with the results of negative thoughts?
The law operates definitely, but not always swiftly. Both the benefits and the penalties incurred through the law by individuals may be harvested by others, either before or after their death. Observe how this law works by forcing upon one generation of people the effects of both the sins and the virtues of preceding generations. In the operation of all of nature's laws, the fourth dimension, time, is an inexorable factor. The length of time consumed by nature in the relation of effects to their causes depends in every instance on the circumstances at hand. Nature grows a pumpkin in 3 months. A good-sized oak tree requires 100 years. She converts a hen's egg into a chicken in 4 weeks, but she requires 9 months to convert the egg of a human being into an individual.
I now have a better understanding of the potentialities description of the next of the 7 principles. What is your next principle?
The next principle is environmental influence.
Go ahead and describe the working principle of environmental influences as a determining factor in human destinies.
Environment consists of all the mental, spiritual, and physical forces which affect and influence human beings.
What connection, if any, is there between environmental influences and hypnotic rhythm?
Hypnotic rhythm solidifies and makes permanent the thought habits of human beings. Thought habits are stimulated by environmental influences. In other words, the material on which thoughts are fed comes from one's environment. Thought habits are made permanent by hypnotic rhythm.
What is the most important part of one's environment? The part which determines, more than all others, whether an individual makes positive or negative use of his mind?
The most important part of one's environment is that created by his association with others. All people absorb and take over, either consciously or unconsciously, the thought habits of those with whom they associate closely.
Do you mean by this that constant association with a person whose thought habits are negative influences one to form negative thought habits?
Yes. The law of hypnotic rhythm forces every human being to form thought habits which harmonize with the dominating influences of his environment, particularly that part of his environment created by his association with other minds.
Then it is important that one select one's close associates with great care.
Yes. One's intimate associates should be chosen with as much care as one chooses the food with which he feeds his body, with the object always of associating with people whose dominating thoughts are positive, friendly, and harmonious.
Which class of associates has the greatest influence upon one?
One's partner in marriage and in the home, and one's associates in his occupation. After that come close friends and acquaintances. Casual acquaintances and strangers have but little influence on one.
Why does one's partner in marriage have so great an influence upon one's mind?
Because the relationship of marriage brings people under the influence of spiritual forces of such weight that they become dominating forces of the mind.
How may environmental influences be used to break the grip of hypnotic rhythm?
All influences which establish thought habits are given permanency through the law of hypnotic rhythm. One may change the influences of his environment, so that the dominating influences are either positive or negative, unless they are changed through one's habits of thought.
Stating this truth in another way, one may submit himself to any environmental influence desired, whether positive or negative, and the law of hypnotic rhythm will make the influence permanent when it assumes the magnitude of thought habit. Is that the way the law works?
That is correct. Be careful of all forces which inspire thought. Those are the forces which constitute environment and determine the nature of one's earthly destiny.
What class of people controls their environmental influences?
The non-drifters. All who are victims of the habit of drifting forfeit their power to choose their own environment. They become the victims of every negative influence of their environment.
Is there no way out for the drifter? Is there no method by which he may submit himself to the influence of a positive environment?
Yes, there is a way out for drifters. They can stop drifting, take possession of their own minds, and choose an environment which inspires positive purpose.
Is that all there is to the act of eliminating the habit of drifting? Is the habit only a state of mind?
Drifting is nothing but a negative state of mind, a state of mind conspicuous by its emptiness of purpose.
What effective procedure may one follow in establishing an environment most helpful in developing and maintaining positive thought habits?
The most effective of all environments is that which may be created by a friendly alliance of a group of people who will obligate themselves to assist one another in achieving. Sort of an alliance is known as a mastermind. Through its operation, one may associate himself with carefully chosen individuals, each of whom brings to the alliance some knowledge, experience, education, plan, or idea suited to his needs in carrying out the object of his definite purpose. The most successful leaders in all walks of life avail themselves of this sort of made-to-order environmental influence. Outstanding achievement is impossible without the friendly cooperation of others. Stating the truth in another way, successful people must control their environment, thereby ensuring themselves against the influence of a negative environment.
What of people whose duty to relatives makes it impossible for them to avoid the influence of a negative environment?
No human being owes another any degree of duty which robs him of his privilege of building his thought habits in a positive environment. On the other hand, every human being is duty-bound to himself to remove from his environment every influence which even remotely tends to develop negative thought habits.
Isn't this a cold-blooded philosophy?
Only the strong survive. No one can be strong without removing himself from all influences which develop negative thought habits. Negative thought habits result in the loss of the privilege of self-determination, no matter what or who may cause those habits. Positive thought habits may be controlled by the individual and made to serve his aims and purposes. Negative thought habits control the individual and deprive him of the privilege of self-determination.
I deduce from all you have said that those who control the environmental influences out of which their thought habits are built are masters of their earthly destinies, and that all others are mastered by earthly destinies. What establishes one's thought habits?
All habits are established because of inherent or acquired desires or motives. That is, habits are begun as the result of some form of definite desire.
What takes place in the physical brain while one is forming thought habits?
Desires are organized impulses of energy, called thoughts. Desires that are mixed with emotional feeling magnetize the brain cells in which they are stored and prepare those cells to be taken over and directed by the law of hypnotic rhythm. When any thought appears in the brain or is created there, and is mixed with keen emotional feeling of desire, the law of hypnotic rhythm begins at once to translate it into its physical counterpart. Dominating thoughts, which are acted upon first by the law of hypnotic rhythm, are those with which are mixed the strongest desires and the most intense feelings. Thought habits are established by the repetition of the same thoughts.
What are the most impelling basic motives or desires which inspire thought action?
The 10 most common motives, those which inspire most of one's physical action, are these: the desire for sex expression and love, the desire for physical food, the desire for spiritual, mental, and physical self-expression, the desire for perpetuation of life after death, the desire for power over others, the desire for material wealth, the desire for knowledge, the desire to imitate others.
You wanna screenshot that or write it down. Give you a moment to do so. Yeah, the 10 most common motives, those which inspire most of one's physical action, are these.
The desire to excel others. The 7 basic fears. These are the dominating motives which inspire the majority of all human endeavors.
What about the negative desires, such as greed, envy, avarice, jealousy, anger? Are these not expressed more often than any of the positive desires?
All negative desires are nothing but frustrations of positive desires. They are inspired by some form of defeat, failure, or neglect by human beings to adapt themselves to nature's laws in a positive way.
That's a new slant on the subject of negative thoughts. If I correctly understand what you have said, all negative thoughts are inspired by one's neglect or failure to adapt oneself harmoniously to nature's laws. Is that correct?
That is exactly correct. Nature will not tolerate idleness or vacuums of any sort. All space must be and is filled with something. Everything in existence, of both a physical and a spiritual nature, must be and is constantly in motion to receive, organize, specialize, and express the power of thought. When the individual does not use the brain for the expression of positive, creative thoughts, nature fills the vacuum by forcing the brain to act upon negative thoughts. There can be no idleness in the brain. Understand this principle, and you will come into a new and important understanding of the part environmental influences take in the lives of human beings. You will better understand also how the law of hypnotic rhythm operates, it being the law which keeps everything and everyone constantly moving through some form of expression of either negative or positive. Nature is not interested in morals as such. She is not interested in right and wrong. She is not interested in justice, forcing everything to express action according to its nature.
That is an enlightening interpretation of nature's ways. To whom may I turn for corroboration of your claims?
To men of science, to the philosophers, to all accurate thinkers. Lastly, to the physical manifestations of nature herself. Nature has no such thing as dead matter. Every atom of matter is constantly in a state of motion. All energy is constantly in motion. There are no dead voids anywhere. Time and space are literally manifestations of motion of such swiftness that it cannot be measured by human beings.
Alas, one is forced to the conclusion from what you say that the sources of dependable knowledge are shockingly limited.
The developed sources of knowledge are limited. Every normal adult human brain is a potential gateway to all the knowledge there is throughout the universes. Every normal adult brain has within its mechanism the possibility of direct communication with infinite intelligence is or can ever be.
Your statement leads me to believe that human beings may become all they have attributed to what they call God. Is that what you mean?
Through the law of evolution, the human brain is being perfected to communicate at will with infinite intelligence. The perfection will come through organized development of the brain, through its adaptation to nature's laws. Time is the factor which will bring perfection.
What causes cycles of recurring events such as epidemics of disease, business depressions, wars, and crime waves?
All such epidemics in which great numbers of people are similarly affected are caused by the law of hypnotic rhythm, through which nature consolidates thoughts of a similar nature and causes those thoughts to be expressed through mass action.
Then the Great Depression was put into motion because great numbers of people were influenced to release thoughts of fear. Is that correct?
Perfectly. Millions of people were endeavoring to get something for nothing through stock gambling. When they suddenly discovered they had gotten nothing for something, they became frightened, rushed to their banks to draw out their balances, and the panic was on. Through mass thought of millions of minds, all thinking in terms of fear of poverty, the depression was prolonged over a period of years.
From what you say, I deduce that nature consolidates the dominating thoughts of people and expresses these thoughts through some form of mass action, such as business depressions, business booms, and so on. Is that correct?
You have the right idea.
Let us now take up the next of the 7 principles. Go ahead and describe it.
The next principle is time, the 4th dimension.
What relationship is there between time and the operation of the law of hypnotic rhythm?
Time is the law of hypnotic rhythm. The lapse of time required to give permanency to thought habits depends upon the object and the nature of the thoughts.
But I understood you to say that the only enduring thing in nature is change. If that is true, then time is constantly changing, rearranging, and recombining all things, including one's thought habits. How then could the law of hypnotic rhythm give permanency to one's thought habits?
Time divides all thought habits into 2 classes, negative thoughts and positive thoughts. One's individual thoughts are, of course, constantly changing and being recombined to suit the individual's desires. But thoughts do not change from negative to positive, or vice versa, except through voluntary effort on the part of the individual. Time penalizes the individual for all negative thoughts and rewards him for all positive thoughts.
And that's why I always stress about mental health and why mindset matters. Because you have the power to choose what thoughts you entertain, whether it be negative or positive. Yes, which comes on today. I'm about to watch that. Pop some popcorn. Enjoy these detective type shows. And also, I've been working on different little art projects. Gonna create some new NFTs. Links below if you want to check out what I got so far. Just scroll down to the bottom, click on the bio where the scales are, and you'll see it. I think I have like 12 for sale right now. And also, free blueprint is right above. You simply put your email in and then check your email for 2 emails, which would be the newsletter and the blueprint with the products and programs available. Earn while you learn, payment plans available. It's all about mindset, life, mentorship. We meet twice a week for tech skills and mindset. And if you like more of this type of content, make sure to subscribe. You can help me achieve my dream and goal of this year, come and monetize on YouTube. Current goal that I'm working on. It's free. Help to support me. And also for my Facebook page subscription, got all type of exclusive content, do-it-yourself products, art projects, and recipes, all type of things. And nevertheless, happy Wednesday. Release my colors and peace and blessings.